I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm not quite sure if we're going to have any more folks joining us, but I do think that we have over half with us today. So thank you all for coming today. I think we're going to start off just going through and doing some introductions again, just because it's been a little while since we've all met. And then we'll do some board updates. I have some data to present, and hopefully we can nail down a few goals that we're interested in pursuing as a committee. And obviously, I know that not all of us are in attendance today. So after this meeting, I can go ahead and share the notes and hopefully get some feedback from those that aren't here today. So if we want to go around, and I'll start. My name is Abby. So for board updates, I apologize if this is coming as a surprise or some of you haven't heard, but Tori is actually taking a leave from the board currently to go and work on the governor's campaign. So she is not going to be with us for the next few months, but obviously is hoping to come back and re-enter into the workforce space come November if everything goes according to plan, but she is not here at the moment. So I am currently serving as the acting executive director. Again, my name is Abby, and I've been with the board for about 7 months now, and I've met many of you, but so just wanted to let you all know about that update. And if we want to just go around, and I can maybe call on someone and then they can call on someone. So Nicole, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Miller. I'm the executive director here at Vermont After School. So it's nice to be with you. I'm going to pass to Sarah.
Good morning, everybody. Sarah Kleinman. I am the director of 4-H Family and Migrant Programs with UVM Extension. And how about Loretta?
Good morning, everybody. Loretta Stallnaker. I'm Chief of Police for Royalton Police Department. I'll call on Kim.
Good morning. I am Kim Anderson with the Orange County Restorative Justice Program, and I work with folks coming out of jail primarily. I'll call on Laurel. And you are muted, Laurel.
Sorry, Laurel Butler with the Vermont Small Business Development Center. I am the startup business specialist and also the student and educator specialist for the state. Then I'll call on, Kayleen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shaylin Keenan. I'm with Vermont Works for Women. Nice to see you all. And how about Patrick?
Hi, y'all. My name is Patrick. I'll be working as the summer intern this summer for the Workforce Development Board, and I'll just be doing some meeting notes. Has Sarah gone yet?
Everyone's gone.
I'll go.
Okay, awesome.
Oh, Jess, you haven't gone. Yeah. Sorry.
Jess Careless, Division Director at the Agency of Education.
Great. All right. So one other thing that I want to do, we haven't done in the past, is I wasn't sure if anyone had anything going on in their organizations or in their work that they just wanted to share with the group. I also wanted to use this space just as a forum for folks if they're looking for resources or if they want to flag anything for anyone else. So I'll just leave that open for a minute if anyone. Laurel, yeah.
I just want to say that we had I also work for in the summertime for the Governor's Institutes of Vermont, and we did the entrepreneurship program. This is our 8th year, and it was absolutely phenomenal. The kids were, these were, what I have to say is that it was the first time we had the huge diversity, 28 students, half boys, half girls, mostly entering the 11th grade. Some of them that want to could do it for 3 college credits using dual enrollment vouchers with Vermont Tech. So it was there. And the 35% of them identified as other than white. So there was actually 11 out of 28. So that's really high. I'm really excited about that. Kids were amazingly engaged and a great team. So I live on campus right with them in the dorms. And sadly, maybe some of you heard, we were very cautious about COVID. We did pre-testing as they arrived, and we were very careful when we went on field trips to Burlington. We all were wearing masks and so forth. And we had COVID tests available if we needed to use them. But sadly, two of the, we don't need to report this statewide, but just to let you know, two of the GIV camps had to close for COVID. Maybe you've heard this, but 120 students that affected for engineering and health and medicine on the second day. It was really pretty sad, but very excited about how things turned out. So thanks.
That's great, Laurel. I'm happy to hear that, and I'm happy to hear about the increase in accessibility in those programs is awesome.
Yeah.
Jess, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, thanks. I just want to let folks know that the agency is about to embark on a year-long or more study of work-based learning and career technical education with the regional educational laboratories. This is an extension of work that we engaged in surveying and pulling together some data around school counseling and to address barriers to flexible pathways. So there'll be more to come. We have a timeline that we're drafting out with our partners. We'll be working pretty closely with our data management and assessment division and schools, but we also want to bring some additional partners in. So if you receive an email from me and I'm introducing you to some folks, that would be why, because we're really looking to have a collaborative partnership in this endeavor.
Great. Loretta?
I just want to let everybody know, Royalton PD is doing, we're doing a national night out from 4 to 8 on August 2nd. I don't know if it's something anybody might bring a table or, whatever, but we're doing car seat event, bike rodeo for the kids. I'm going to have hamburgers and hot dogs, stuff like that. So, it's out there. If anybody wants to put a table up or participate, just let me know.
Great. Kim?
Well, I'll be there. We are in Orange County, and I know this is happening across the state. The restorative justice programs are becoming more involved by request from the schools around doing restorative justice training, and that's elementary and high schools. So I'm really excited about that the schools are actually calling us and asking for that kind of training. It's really, in Chittenden County, they've been working on this a lot more systematically, but the rest of the state we're more hit or miss. So I feel like there's been a big push since COVID, since the kids are going back to school and teachers are at their wits' end, to look at alternative ways of working with the kids. So that's exciting.
Great. Sarah?
Yeah, I just also wanted to share, we launched a new program called Agritech this past summer, which was a grant-funded initiative. Similar to GIVE, we ran intensive week-long summer academies to build agri-STEM skills, and we had 22 students at UVM, actually at the same week that the GIVE math camp was happening, and went without incident. But we had two different cohorts, one group of students studying how to culture cells for healthier soils, and building relationships with faculty on campus, but we also integrated undergraduate student fellows as mentors with these students, hoping to build that pipeline. So there was the cells one, and then we had a second cohort that was called Waste to Value, shifting the waste to value paradigm, looking at agricultural waste, industrial hemp waste, and converting those into value-added products. We'll be building on that next year, adding a third academy, and then a year after that, a fourth academy. And Jess, I do know that one of the students was able to utilize the experience for credit at their school to support that flexible pathways and their PLP. So
That's great.
I wanted to share that as well. And then one other quick thing, we are running a facilitator training for an evidence-based curriculum called Strengthening Families program, ages 10 to 14. It's focused on drug and alcohol prevention, and we're targeting the Northeast Kingdom. It's part of a model that we run called Prosper, but we are looking for people willing to be trained as facilitators. It is a paid gig if you get trained and then you do want to become one of those facilitators for the sites that we run. That's happening in a couple weeks. So if anybody's interested in learning more, please let me know.
Great. All right, so I think for today's agenda, we were just going to review some data that you all had touched on our last meeting back in May. And then, as I had mentioned, Tori leaving her role, we went through and flushed out some of the concrete ideas that we thought would be good for the committee to focus on. And I think one of the important things as we're getting off the ground is trying to come up with a goal that we want to meet with some deliverables that we can achieve fairly quickly. Just that way we have some momentum going, I think is important as a group. So I think after reviewing the data, we had a few goals that we had come up with, but obviously if there's something else that we want to come up with as a group, we don't need to go off of what Tori and I came up with, but obviously wanted to come with some ideas for you all. So we can review that and go from there. But before we start, does anyone have any questions or anything? Okay, great. And obviously a lot of the data that we've collected is from the Agency of Education. So at any point, Jess, if you have anything to say, feel free to hop in and provide feedback. All right. All right, can everyone see my screen? Yes, okay, perfect. Okay, so to start off, we just wanted to take a look at the current feeder pools that we have, including our K through 12 schools. And again, a lot of this information is from off of the Agency of Education. So to note here, looking from 2004 up to 2021, we've had a decline in students enrolled in K through 12 throughout the state. Obviously looking at pre-K through 12, we started in 2004, the number around 93,000, and now we're at 78,000. So this enrollment has fallen roughly around 21.3%. So just to take note of that, the declining enrollment.
Can I just hop
oh yeah,
in
go
here
ahead.
real quick? Just and this wouldn't be something that people would be familiar with in looking at the dashboard. So from 2004 to 2008, our historical academies were actually included in our data set. So while I think nationally we're seeing declining birth rates, part of this decline is going to be related from pulling out independent schools from our data and reporting. And so I just wanted to provide that sort of context for folks.
Right. And just, do you know when that was? Do you know the year, or was it?
Yeah, so probably from 2000, I would say 2009, 2010 and on is when we sort of extracted those historical academies. So there is a decline, and again, that sort of maps to national trends, but that sort of, there's a cliff that is a consequence of pulling out independent schools.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then looking here, just covering more, diving into K through 12 enrollment and the breakdown in counties. I know that at our last meeting, we'd really talked about accessibility in some of our programs and engaging our youth. And so obviously the overall trend here with 11 of the 14 counties having declines in enrollment with K through 12, but I think just wanting to highlight the more rural areas. So whether that's Addison or Essex, from 2011 to 2021, you see a pretty significant decline in enrollment, looking at in the double digits in comparison to more populated areas like Chittenden, where it's only at 8.3% and a change there.
I'm sorry to go back to what Jess was saying, though. This is about public school enrollment primarily.
Yes, I believe so. Jess?
Yeah, we don't collect independent school data, so that would be invisible to folks.
Thank you.
Right. And then moving on, looking at the percentage of graduation rates for K through 12, I we had seen a trend as well here with obviously more folks graduating on a 6-year track compared to a 4-year track. So I think taking that into account when we're thinking about our goals and deliverables, and that there obviously is a higher percent graduation rate with folks who are not necessarily on a traditional 4-year path. But then again, also seeing a slight decline in graduation rates from 2018 to 2021, but not super significant there. So moving on, looking at graduation rate trends and also career readiness there, with this data that was collected with our graduation rate, it looks like we are meeting our current performance indicators. However, looking at change, it is declining. So with this, it could be measured on whether it was declining, not improving, improving, or excelling. And so while we're currently meeting those graduation rate performance measures, there was a note of it declining. And in regards to equity index, not meeting those standards, and again, looking like it is getting worse and not improving.
Do you mind if I just jump in real quick again on this? Because there's a context and caveats document that the assessment team put out regarding the state report card in this area. And again, in looking at some of the interactions with the COVID context, we have a pretty flexible education environment, which is fantastic until it comes to reporting. And when you have things such as a pandemic, it can create some muddiness. So I'll put that in the chat just so folks have access to it. But two things, particularly around the college and career readiness and graduation rate trends, is we are seeing likely a sort of COVID context and interaction. We also have students who sort of moved into home study and an increase in students who are accessing early college, which actually does impact rates when you're looking at the denominator versus numerator. So again, I'm not sure we can make any affirmative statements. I wouldn't want to do that right now. I would just say that this definitely got a lot muddier as we're trying to track that. Certainly we saw home study balloon. I think the other piece with the CCR assessments is we do use ACT, SAT, and as folks probably know, though access to those tests were paused for a period of time, and then colleges significantly relaxed entrance requirements, including that students didn't have to take these assessments. So again, I'm not sure if we could, these are always just sort of proxies, so I'm not sure we can say that college career readiness itself declined, but certainly participation in those assessments as a result of behaviors and changes at the post-secondary level did result in a decline. And I do have some numbers around that. So just pre-pandemic, 13% of 11th graders were taking the ACT. The following year, 1% took the ACT. So a pretty precipitous drop. So I just wanted to provide that context as well.
Okay. That's great context to have. Thank you, Jess. And so moving on from that, I think one of the other things that we had discussed, again, in regards to accessibility and accessing kids that don't necessarily have the same opportunities as others might, in regards to our WIOA funding, there was an audit done back in September of 2021. And in regards to Title I youth funding, it was estimated that about 2,100, there were 2,100 low-income young Vermonters that were not connected to a job or in schools. And with our WIOA funding, we had served about 337 of those kids, so roughly 16%. And so I just wanted to flag that as an opportunity of how we can better reach those kids and offer wraparound services. I think is something that is really important that we should be focusing on. And again, I know that at the last meeting, we really were trying to brainstorm ideas on diversity and accessibility as one of the priorities on the committee. So just wanting to flag that. And then obviously this information is coming from the Department of Labor, but with labor force participation rate in the mid 2000s, there was roughly 60% participation with the age group of between 16 to 19-year-olds. And then pre-COVID about 45%, and now we're about below 40%. So really thinking about ways that we can engage with that workforce that is not currently engaged with that trend that we're seeing. And as well, this is in regards, these next two images are just between 9th and 10th grade with general education and CTE headcount. And then we also have 11th and 12th grade. And again, it looks like a little bit of a peak there back going up in 2019, but a decline in that engagement similar to the labor force participation rate that we had just mentioned on the last slide. So that being said, with those numbers, I think that it's important to highlight that we do have the infrastructure set up in the state. So I think at the last meeting, someone had asked for information regarding the career technical education centers that we had. So we just wanted to list them. But I think it's important to note that we do have this infrastructure in the state. It's just figuring out how to better utilize it and make it more efficient and coordinating and collaborating. I think Elizabeth Frescoya had asked about accessibility and where we had some of our programs located, and specifically with this after school map, as you can see, luckily that there is a good geographically diverse range of where these after school programs are located. And also just looking at the key partners that we have involved, I just wanted to stop here for a minute while we're thinking about key deliverables. If there was anything else that we were missing on this page that you all wanted to flag that we were missing with key partners, or obviously I'm happy to circulate this presentation at the end of our committee meeting to just see, as we're brainstorming about our deliverables, the folks that we need to have in the room or take into account or who we're not including in this list. Does anyone have any questions or anything?
Yeah, I know we are really under the VTS-BDC is under the VSC, and will continue to be under the VSC even with the change here. But you know, I really and I don't know if it makes it. I would love to see the VTS-BDC as a key partner here, in that, you know, all workforce really, you know, we work with all workforce development. I mean, everybody, any small business, really is part of the workforce. So,
Definitely.
but I don't know if it makes sense to just go just VSC-CCV, VTS-BDC, and then there's also VMAC too, but anyway.
Great, thank you. Okay. All right. So looking at that data, taking into account the trends that we have in the state, obviously Tori and I had brainstormed a few key deliverables that we just wanted to run by you all, and thinking about any goals that we wanted to identify and work towards as a committee. And so the 4 groups that we had really focused on was the actual population, so the youth. Then we had the system within the system staff within the population, so those that are providing the resources. Then we were focusing on employers and what they would possibly need. And then we had a focus on accessibility. So I guess I can go through and explain the 4 goals that we had come up with, and then we can flush them out, or if anyone is really against ideas or wants to come up with a different one, happy to do that. So in regards to youth, we really, and also maybe just fine tuning it, but identifying a percentage and a group that we wanted to engage with. So we had just thrown out there 90% of high school sophomores engage in some sort of career exploration by their sophomore year in high school. And we thought that in order to do this, we could track the already existing career opportunities and events in their areas, identify gaps by location, type of programming, and connecting with schools around the state with a certain number of opportunities per year. So that would be creating some sort of tracking system to see what events are in the area, making sure that they're engaging with schools, programs, whatever's in the area, so that those kids are getting exposure. And the goal there was a certain age group and a certain percentage of that age group.
Question on that one, if I could.
Yes.
Yeah, and this has probably changed since I was teaching. I'm sure it has, at least I hope so. I wouldn't doubt that 90% do some type of career exploration, but really how much it is really happening, at least when I was teaching at one of the Chittenden County high schools. I was the one who did the career exploration, and I was allowed only 1 hour to do anything with the students, and that was through their English class.
Okay.
In their sophomore year. So, I mean, that's not a whole, I mean, we did other stuff. We had internships, all kinds of things, but that wasn't the entire population. So just curious on how much time is involved in that.
Laurel, I think that that's something that the work that we're doing right now and the work that we're going to be doing with the REL EIS can help clarify. We do actually pull up information through our state longitudinal data system from the student information systems around course taking, which, you know, they have particular coding in which we can pull that out. I will say that, and not knowing when you were teaching, but we do know just as, and we're not going to out you, but we do know that when, you know, from the perspective of even looking at the numbers of educators who have the work-based learning endorsement, I mean, that tripled in a
Right.
2-year period. So I will say, and we have flexible pathway coordinators and PLP coordinators,
Right.
independent based learning coordinators. We have a profusion of sort of names. So we are trying to get some clarity around that, and particularly working with my colleagues in the licensing department, we're also trying to track that a little bit more clearly through our new licensing system that will be standing up. So I think that's something that we could take on to try to get some clarity, and maybe it would be useful. Maybe you've just unintentionally volunteered to be part of
happy
that
to.
effort. You could say no, but right, like that's what we're trying to solve and getting at, you know, when we talk about across that career progression chart from career exploration to, you know, doing something like a co-op experience,
Right.
you know, what are those percentages?
Great. Thanks, Jess.
Anyone else? Any other comments? I know it looks like Elizabeth just joined. Elizabeth, do you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself again to the group since you just hopped on? Oh, I don't know if she can hear us. Okay, she might not hear us, so we'll keep going. So the second goal that we're thinking of related to the system, the staff involved in the system, would be, again, another percentage point that we could tweak here is 90% school staff within K through 12 have access and awareness of state resources and career pathways. So obviously folks within the system are aware of these resources, but just figuring out how to streamline getting them information more quickly. And so developing or promoting some sort of school toolkit for educators and mentors to serve as a reference. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on that one? No.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. For me, it's like the $1 million question that we've been trying to crack for years in terms of helping school know about resources that community partners and other agencies and entities can offer. So that I think it's important and challenging.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and I wonder, Abby, if this also is connected. There's some work that the Department of Labor has been sort of engaged in for quite some time when we're talking about like dashboards and resources. But I do think that there are materials right now when we're talking about awareness of resources and career pathways that are under that are available right now or under development. But I think it's this idea of how do you keep it evergreen, right? Which, you know, so that it continues to be a place that people can go to and can also respond quickly to changes. And I wonder if that some of the discussion around having anchor points for convenings is a good place to make sure that you can stay current and keep those new opportunities available. But I do think that keeping it fresh piece is the trickiest part.
Right. And I don't know if it would be better to have some sort of updated website or a newsletter or like you were saying, some sort of like anchor convening where people could be updated. But and I'm not sure, do you have a sense that those resources are condensed in one place, or maybe even the first step is to make sure that it's all in one place?
Yeah, I think just the challenge here, and this again, I would invite like maybe having Sarah Buxton come in to present on the work that they've done to date, and because they put out an RFP, they've been working, you know, to identify a vendor and develop a dashboard. But the issue always is how do people keep it how do people keep it current? Who maintains it, right? Those kinds of things. And I wonder, knowing that there's been a lot of people in that space who've been exploring that, whether moving into another space, such as like those anchor convenings, could be a way to sort of partner the different initiatives that are happening so that we can keep it current. Because I know from my perspective, K-12 educators particularly are hungry for those convenings, like that opportunity to connect directly with folks, and would respond well to that.
Right, definitely. Yeah, so maybe in the future, some sort of meeting with the Department of Labor or folks that are already looking into that and seeing ways that we as a committee can serve to support that would be something if folks are maybe interested in that. And obviously it's nice to be spearheading that with another group, so it's not just on us to be taking the initiative on that. Okay. And then moving on to the next one that we had thought of, which was more employer focused. Again, similar to educators in the school systems, making sure that businesses are aware of career exploration opportunities within local students within, and we had just thrown this out there, a 50-mile radius, but obviously depending on the county or wherever it might be, that would probably fluctuate. But I think that at least from the board's perspective, with the business owner voice in mind, I think that we meet with a lot of business owners that are looking for ways to connect with youth and get them involved in the workforce, but aren't really sure how to go about doing that. So I'm not sure if, again, some sort of like toolkit for business owners to get. And I know that we had just created a general one to send out to employers to use to reference with state agencies. And so coming up with some sort of regional toolkit for different businesses in the areas to then reach out to schools. And again, I'm not sure if that work is already being done or not, Jess, but that could be something that maybe we could spearhead just to reach out to employers and get them involved.
I have a question about this one though. Is it more for businesses to be aware of things that are already happening, or is it for businesses to help inform entities that are offering career exploration opportunities to do so, meeting the needs of those employers?
I think it could be both. It could be whatever, and it could be region specific as well. If it's in an ideal world, if it's an employer and a work-based learner have contact with another, and you know that certain employer looks for, X amount of students per year or whatever it may be, I think it's just about connecting those lines of communication. Or if, the school is having some sort of career exploration, and so you want to make sure that the local businesses are aware of it and getting involved. So I think because it would be regionally based and more specific, it can be tailored to whatever the businesses and the schools or whatever it may be in that area are looking for. Any other thoughts on that one?
I mean,
That's, I see this as a really good tie-in to, do you have the RDCs as partners? You must have. I didn't see that up there.
Yes, definitely the RDCs.
Yeah, so I think the RDCs, I mean, it would be, I think between maybe SBDC or the RDCs putting out some kind of inquiry, as to, or getting some focus groups here would be kind of cool, because looking at what they've already developed or what's going on, and Jess, you probably already know this, what's happening, but if there's a way that businesses, if it's an easy opportunity for a business to utilize the skills of our young people to come into their businesses and assist in some things with giving them real assignments versus just some grunt work, excuse me, that, if they know sort of that criteria as like, this would make a really good opportunity for an internship, and that stuff is probably already available, but I don't know that. So, but if they have those kinds of criteria, that would be really helpful, so they don't have to invent this stuff.
Yeah, Laurel, you're right. I mean, I think that from a work-based learning perspective, there is already a set of developed tools and resources that schools can use.
Yeah.
What I wonder though, that this group could move into like an unmet need space around like incentives to businesses to
Uh-huh.
participate in those structured learning opportunities. Because, you know, it does, and particularly, I think the pandemic sort of played out, there was a decline in participation because there was risks that people weren't necessarily willing to lean into or didn't feel comfortable, didn't know how to navigate it. So I think we wouldn't want to have like a toolkit that was like counter or in competition with some of the tools that have been developed, but tools that are unique for businesses to incentivize and encourage them to do that. And then I do wonder, we want it to be work-based learning, but also there's just youth employment generally divorced from school. There, you know, what is that outreach and support? And it almost sounds like I'm like speed dating for like youth and businesses to sort of match up. So I think there's kind of like two tracks that we could be exploring.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
Nicole, is that a new hand?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as part of the governor's after-school task force, there has been some work around jobs for youth and trying to work with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development around helping do some of that matching Jess was just talking about. And I'll drop the links for those into the chat box.
Great. Any other comments or questions?
I have a sort of general one because we've got youth system staff and employers, but a lot of our data has just sort of shown too that I'm wondering if there's a role to target families and caregivers, because often, you know, particularly if we're talking about youth, there's going to be that necessary connection. There'll be a need for some of those supports, even if it comes to transportation, et cetera. But also, you know, certainly with CTE, we've seen some challenges in how people perceive career technical education, particularly like families and parents who maybe had a different perception than what it is now, which can create like a block to access for students. So I just wonder if some direct outreach, and again, you know, we've got schools, right? We've got after school, we've got people, we've got Department of Labor, ACCD, who are targeting these groups, but I'm wondering about who's targeting families, and that's a place to maybe lean into. And when we think about accessibility, you know, we could combine that when I think about the Vermont Family Network. That's a great group to connect with when thinking about both addressing accessibility issues and outreach to families.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that does tie in to the last point with our last goal of coming up with some sort of percentage of accessing low-income young Vermonters and connecting them to wraparound services and tying that into WIOA funding. And I think an aspect of that could be obviously targeting parent support systems, whatever it might be, to try and access that group in regards to accessibility. So I definitely agree. And I think that, especially if we think that that's an area that hasn't really been tapped into yet, obviously we don't want to duplicate services if things are already happening. So I think what I'm hearing, it sounds like, is either the employer-based goal or something in regards to accessibility, and parents and support systems might be something that's more at the forefront of what we could do that would have the most significant impact, whereas the youth focus or the system staff, there's already a lot going on in those spaces. So wanting to make the biggest impact where we can. Does anyone have any other thoughts on any of that?
I just will jump in real quick. It's kind of an incomplete thought, but so I'll get my more information and try to get it out. I attended a presentation a few months ago now out of New Hampshire that was looking at workforce and youth retention in the state of New Hampshire with a large focus on CTE, career pathways work. And one of the largest, they did a big study out of, I think it was out of the University of New Hampshire. And one of the biggest things that they found goes to your point, Jess, I think that we can't underestimate, which is parent and family, caregiver, you know, whatever a kid's family looks like, their perception around education and career tracks. that for what they found was that in some of the lower income families who responded to the survey, regardless of what a non-4-year degree could provide a kid, they still saw a 4-year university or college track as the ticket to the cultural capital that they need to be successful or to achieve whatever vision they have for themselves and their kids. And they then also saw that higher and middle income families who previously may have had different, preconceived ideas of what a CTE track during high school or post high school would look like for their kid, they were warming up to the idea that, oh, this is a really viable pathway for my child. They don't need to enroll in a 4-year university to be successful in life and to make enough money to be stable and secure. So I just think that piece is really important. We can't undervalue it. And I know I kind of I didn't do a very good job of explaining what it was I took away from that meeting, but I'll find the information because it's pretty relevant, I think, to this conversation and try to share it out. And perhaps there's some folks there in New Hampshire who we could bring into the conversation.
Yeah, I feel like if you have access to that study and any of the takeaways, that would be great to distribute. I definitely would like to look at that and see if there's anything we can, I'm sure there are things that we can learn from that and maybe pull into some of our goals or direction that we're going in. So that'd be great.
Okay.
Kim, is that a new hand?
Yeah, I was just, I just actually want to piggyback on what you were just saying, that what we're seeing is that there is a real disconnect between the kids and all of these players, including their families. And so I know it's outside of the purview of this group, but I'm just wondering for feedback of that mentorship programs are, we don't have any around here that are viable. And I'm just wondering what role you guys are seeing as that mentorship programs can play, like individual mentorship, like it used to be called, Big Brothers and Big Sisters. But we're really seeing the need for kids to have that personal connection to somebody that supports them through this whole process, because there's so many barriers for low income or minority students to get from A to Z. And the family can be part of that barrier, as you guys were just talking about. So I'm just wondering where that fits into this piece.
Elizabeth, can you hear us now? Okay, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry I was late today, but great to hear this discussion and see where this is going. Sort of right following on Kim though, what this is making me wonder, I mean, we are 80% done with our institutes, which are exactly this population, right? High school age students. And we have, I know we talked about this in an earlier meeting, but like so many students with anxiety and mental health concerns, and so many students who identify as queer or BIPOC. And I want to make sure that like 90%, is an awesome goal, but how do we make sure that we're partnering with folks like Outright Vermont or other places that have real connections to those communities? Vermont Professionals of Color Network. I don't know if they're in the universe here yet, but I'm really just like wanting to make sure those students are on the forefront. And also, I think I'm curious about how businesses are able to incorporate, particularly students who identify outside of the gender binary. I think those students struggle so much in whatever you want to call it, mainstream environments. And maybe there's some training that could be done or some kind of matching where it would be really dangerous for a youth who identifies as like a trans youth, for example, to show up in an environment that isn't, it could be a bad experience for them in terms of workplace. So I'm just wondering about how we can be intentional about those matches.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like involving some of those folks in the conversation and perhaps adding some of them to this committee so that they can have a voice in here, because obviously I'm not the expert, but I agree with you that I think it needs to be baked into everything that we do. So definitely. Jess?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to maintain my attention span because I just got so excited that now I want to like respond to so many folks have said. So I think just immediately, I feel like that has just provided some really specific next steps if we want to think about that employer focused line. Because when we're talking about a toolkit, what I feel like we're frequently not talking, because we're always talking about like, what do youth need to know? You know, what do youth need to be able to do? But I feel like we often run up against, you know, do employers know how to work with youth? And do they understand the special role of employing and providing that training and mentorship to youth? So I'm wondering if in that employer focused line is to really think about the toolkit being about training employers to work with today's youth and being really specific and sensitive to different student groups, different youth groups that, you know, I know we track those data. It isn't just about 90%, but then you're looking for parity across student group participation based on population numbers. So I think that could be something like really actionable that we could do that is specific to youth. I also, just going back to what Kim was saying, because I just resoundingly, yes, mentorship, you know, you know, when, and I think developmentally, you know, modifying it across those age bands, but we have some developing data. I oversee the community schools program, and just by having a community school coordinator whose focus was on matching every student with a community-based and work-based learning experience, they're finding that they have almost 100% of those participating seniors. First of all, almost 100% of the seniors had an opportunity, and then almost 100% of those seniors now have employment for the summer, right? Based on that connection. And I think it's because you had somebody who could really just focus on that. And so even with work-based learning coordinators, not every system can afford to have a work-based learning coordinator or that kind of position, even if you're doing it within school, but it's that out of school time space, that third space between home and school that we want to sort of connect and bridge. And again, another community school grantee also is a 21C project, but they've just worked with their town to fill the last week so that they have literally year-round programming for students by working with the municipality to fill in that last week. And again, it's that mentorship space that I think is a great opportunity to be additive to the school community employer space as opposed to necessarily replicating it or revisioning it.
Definitely. Any other thoughts? I feel like we're coming to a conclusion that we're thinking of focusing on that employer / mentorship focused goal and maybe fine tuning that, but that seems like the direction that we're wanting to go in. Does anyone have any other closing thoughts or comments on that? No. Okay, I'm seeing a thumbs up from Kim, so. All right, well, I can go ahead and flesh some of those ideas out. I think just with it being the summer, I will probably send out a doodle poll and see how much engagement we can get in August and see if we can schedule a meeting in August, but depending on what people say, we might have to move it to September, but we'll shoot for August and we can go from there. So it was great to see all of you, and I'll give you 8 minutes back in your day, and I appreciate you all coming.
Thanks for
Thank
having me.
Good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.